Hi guys, thanks for tuning to the episode of the Nick Egan Times. We have an awesome guest. We have Milton Campis. Milton is a 47-year-old heart attack survivor. Milton is a purple belt in Jiu Jitsu, a marketing executive for over 13 years, and Michael has his own Jiu Jitsu based podcast called Jiu Jitsu Dummies Podcast. Welcome Milton, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Nick. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. How's it all going over there?
Good. Again, I was apologizing to you when I came on. We just down to the second. It was like 3:59. We were set for 4. We just finished our podcast with a really cool police officer who trains jiu-jitsu and does like police videos online. So called Jiu Jitsu 5.0. I don't know if you know Hawaii 5.0, right? You've heard of that. Yeah. Jiu Jitsu 5.0 on Instagram. So we were just finishing up the interview. It was going. We usually keep them around an hour and a half, and it just kept on going and was flowing. It was perfect. So love those episodes that happen like that. So apologize for being a few minutes late, but just getting off of my own podcast and joining you here today.
Well, that's cool, and I understand that. How's COVID impacted your life so far over there since it's happened, and how's it all going with that?
So, I'll give you personally and professionally. Actually, personally, professionally, and then as it relates to jiu-jitsu, if that's all right. Yeah. So, personally, it's been a rough year. Been quarantining basically since March. My job, my 9 to 5 that I have, we went into quarantine, and business got better for us. We're a marketing company, so like some of our clients, our industries, especially as it relates to like home services, they took off. They got busy. People were home. I want to fix that leaky roof. I want to. My HVAC, my AC unit went. It's on more during the day. My dishwasher went. Those are our service clients or service-based business clients. Their businesses took off. So our business took off. They want to do more. They give us referrals. So here we are, a company of close to 100 people, all working from home. We're thinking that it's going to be like the death of the company, and we go and have record months in sales. We go and have we're adding employees around the country. We've almost always had people here. Very rarely does anybody work for the company that's outside of actually coming into the building. We now have employees all over the country, and we're all still working from home. We basically initiated our hurricane protocol, being in Florida, in the U.S. and Florida. We always know that a hurricane could come, and what are we going to do? Well, we have to work from home, internet backups, servers, things like that. So we just flipped that switch, and we just wound up staying home this time. So we've been home for nearly a year. So business-wise, business got better. Personally, I've worked from home for years on years before, so this is kind of normal for me. I like it. For jiu-jitsu itself, I actually, the day before I was going into quarantine for work, not going into the office anymore on a Monday, the Sunday before, I actually had an MCL and ACL injury training jiu-jitsu. So I couldn't train jiu-jitsu anyway. So I was going into quarantine. Here I am on the couch, knee up, ice on it. And, I couldn't train anyway. So that's a big part of my life. So that was hard to do. But I just was working from home, and I was forced into not training jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is a very intimate sport. We're touching, we're sweating on each other. It's the ground part of what people see in the UFC, right? The grappling. Yeah. So it was really, really difficult to not do it. But at the same time, it was kind of good that I got forced into not training, because I would have trained through the pandemic. I'm training now that I'm healed up. Florida is one of the more lax states. They don't have a set mask mandate. Even though businesses suggest it, they don't have a mandate. So jiu-jitsu studios, they threw up some tint on their front windows, and they've been rolling throughout the entire pandemic. It's not a good thing, but that's the kind of the world that we live in right now.
Yeah, cool. That's great insights.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. All right, let's just jump straight into it for the listeners. Who is Milton Campis?
So, that answer's changed a lot over just the last couple of years. I am a, marketing exec by day. I'm a husband, I'm a father. But, jiu-jitsu is a huge part of my world now. I've had a T-shirt website. evolved into, doing the podcast. And, I've trained as much as, 5-6 times a week for a good part of these 7 years that I've been training, going on 7 years. June will be 7 years. So I'm a lot of things, but, what I'm becoming, besides just recently getting married, from outside of the personal. Yeah, thank you. I am, I'm a jiu-jitsu practitioner. I love, it's not like this greedy thing that I just do for myself. I love talking about jiu-jitsu. I started a foundation awarding jiu-jitsu scholarships to kids, first responders, veterans. I whether it's on the podcast or to friends, family, coworkers, I preach the value of jiu-jitsu for their kids, for themselves, just, the stress relief. We just, again, had a police officer on. My dad was a cop, talking about the benefits of jiu-jitsu for police officers. And, this is a non-striking discipline, so it's about getting control. If you see the logo right here above my head off to the side, We Defy, we're an ambassador. The show is an ambassador for the We Defy Foundation, which awards jiu-jitsu scholarships to wounded combat veterans. One of the founders actually is a triple amputee, only has one arm, and trains jiu-jitsu. So, besides, my personal stuff, I kind of say I'm an ambassador for jiu-jitsu. I love talking about it. I love doing it. I love awarding our own scholarships. I love, being part of a foundation or a nonprofit like We Defy, who is, awarding scholarships as well. So if I had to say at the end of the day right now, I love that I've become this ambassador for jiu-jitsu.
It's amazing. And yeah, your passion for it just shines through.
Yeah, thank you.
About it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's take it back. Tell me about growing up and how your life was growing up and where you grew up.
I live in Florida now. This is going on about 25, 26 years. I grew up in New York on Long Island. When I say New York, a lot of people, they think the city right away, New York City. Well, there's a whole state around the city. So I grew up on Long Island. It starts to come out when I say it, things like coffee, water, Long Island, it comes out. Look, I was just, son of a cop, and thought that's what I was going to do. In New York, especially on Long Island, little boys want to be firemen or cops. That's usually what you become. There's so many of the police officers in New York City that, they don't want to be in the city once they see kind of the darker side of the city and they move to kind of the more rural areas. I was about an hour outside of the city in an area called Medford, Patchogue Medford area is what it's named. And I literally had for when people hear New York, they kind of think this part is funny. I had deer running through my backyard as a kid. I used to set rabbit traps with my dad. It was very rural. That's how rural it was and how different it is from the city life. But again, just grew up as a normal kid. Parents are still together. Grew up with a sister that I hated. We used to fight all the time. Just a normal kid. Once I got a little older, I did want to become a cop. Took the test in the NYPD test, and actually wound up. I was doing it at that age. Growing up, I wanted to be a cop. At that age, I wasn't ready for it. I was too immature. So kind of walked away from the opportunity and got into sales. I was a stockbroker in New York. I sold life insurance. And I moved to Florida as a broker, raising money for a company, and then just never left. For me, I found the jiu-jitsu side of my life very late in life. I didn't start training jiu-jitsu till I was right before my 41st birthday. But it's hard to say who I was back then. But now, again, I go back into what I said before. I've become this ambassador for jiu-jitsu. So wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all those things that happened. But just really kind of didn't lead an exciting, it wasn't like anything really stuck out as was going to mold me into the person I am. I love that my father was a cop. That was a big part of our life. A friend, next door neighbor was a cop. He actually brought my dad out to Long Island and said, I'm building a house here. My dad built a house right next door. We had the biggest concentration of police officers in our whole neighborhood, like in and around our block. So it just grew up with, in that culture. So always thought that's what I was going to do. And then I, kind of went the sales route. Always wanted to own my own business as well. So kind of went that sales route.
That's amazing. Terrific. All right. Tell me about a story. You're obviously a heart attack survivor a couple of years ago. Yeah. That's obviously crazy and intense. Talk to me about that story, man. You're happy to.
Yeah, it comes right back to jiu-jitsu though as well. So I was training jiu-jitsu on a Friday night after work. This is before the pandemic. This June will be 3 years. Wow. So I went to train like normal, like I would always do. Left and went to go have some acai at a little Brazilian restaurant right around the corner from our gym with some friends, some of my training partners. And I just felt like some pressure. If you've ever lifted weights, it kind of felt like that feeling you get a day or two after you do some good chest exercises, like some pain there. And for jiu-jitsu, it was like somebody was sitting on me, like we're in positions where people are putting all their weight on us. I felt that, but I really didn't think much of it. Honestly, I just thought I had to go to the bathroom, as funny as that might sound. Yeah. And I figured, okay, maybe I'm going to feel better, a little indigestion. Come home, I talk to my wife, I feel a little weird. My arm bothered me. I felt some pain in my right arm, which is usually they say, your left arm, you're having a heart attack. Well, it wasn't that, and that's an old wives' tale. That's not true. So I was actually having pain from my right arm up to my chest, nothing on my left. So I didn't think it was my heart because I had heard that all my life. So took a shower, went to bed, felt fine, woke up in the morning, went to train. We do what's called an open mat on Saturdays where it's just, you have other people come in from other gyms and you're training with other people. And just went to a normal training session and came home, same thing. But this time I had pain from elbow to elbow. I could feel it down my arms. Now it was like a little bit more worried. My wife and I she does some kickboxing. I was doing jiu-jitsu. We usually cross paths on a Saturday morning and maybe we'll go out and do errands together or do them separately. I took a shower. I was getting ready to leave for my errands. I hear the front door open. I tell her, hey, listen, I'm having the same feeling. Come upstairs. So we kind of just sat on the bed and said, let's see if this passes. And in that time, she convinced me to go to the hospital. So she drove me to the hospital and didn't really think of it. Again, thought it was like indigestion. Wasn't sure what it was, but the last thing on my list was that I was having a heart attack. They hooked me up to the EKG. Guy comes back they do the EKG. They get the printout. One guy leaves the room, comes back with a doctor. They leave the room. They come back with some more nurses. And they don't say the word heart attack, but they wind up telling, they're like, yeah, there's an anomaly here in the EKG. We're going to send you over to the hospital. And, this is obviously heart related. Put me in an ambulance. I go over and they just rush me to a hospital in Fort Lauderdale, about 20 minutes away. And I go right into the cardiac unit. This was I was having what they call a non-STEMI heart attack. And they put me right onto a table where they do a catheterization. I think I'm saying it right. They put a cath through a vein in your leg. They go into the heart. And I wound up getting 3 stents that first day. So they basically put little bags in, clear the plaque. I had blockages. I was 80% blocked on my main artery, which is what they call the widowmaker, if you've heard that term. That's the one that kills most people because that one gets blocked. And so I was 80% blocked. So they basically clear that blockage by inflating some little balloons. And once they clear that blockage, they put in stents because now those arteries could collapse because they've had the plaque holding them open. This is I'm not a doctor, so the way I understand it, right? So they put these stents in, and these mesh stents hold the arteries open. So I have 2 stents on my main artery, 2 stents in other parts around my heart. 3 the first day, had to go back in and do that again. The next day, they put a 4th one in. So now I have some extra parts in there after I left. So I have 4 mesh stents in my heart. And, I just actually recently, now over 2 years later, just gone off of most of my heart meds. They put you on a lot of medications so that your body doesn't reject the stents. And then they really want to keep your blood very, very thin with baby aspirins and different types of prescription blood thinners. So now I've gone off of all that. Now I just take Lipitor and a baby aspirin every day. So not so bad, but I had 3 other pretty heavy medications that kind of did a job on my cardio and dizziness. If I stood up quickly, that happens to a lot of people. You stand up and you get dizzy. Well, that happened to be I'd have to literally like get up slow, put my hand on the desk. Okay, I'm not going to be okay, and then go about my, go walk to wherever I was going to walk. So yeah, that's my heart attack story, and it's again going on 3 years later. Went back to training, of course, comes back to jiu-jitsu. Went back to training less than 4 weeks later, probably a little early. But they said as long as I wasn't taking any kicks to my heart, to my chest region, which we don't strike in jiu-jitsu, and I wasn't doing any kickboxing at the time. They were like, you're okay. You should be okay. You should wait as long as possible till you feel good. But again, about 3.5 weeks in, I was back to training jiu-jitsu. So definitely noticed a lot of cardio differences since I've been back, but always something I'm trying to battle with. But now that I'm off the meds, it's been getting better.
Yeah, I'm obviously clearly happy that you survived.
Thank you. You wouldn't have a guest today. You'd be talking to a blank screen.
Exactly. How that really interests me, obviously, because it's you don't obviously see that very often. How was your mental state after it? And obviously that's really confronting in a serious side note to this. How was your mental state after it? Because that's really confronting.
I am kind of like a comedian by nature. I'm absolutely a glass half full person. Haven't always been like that. Just, some events in my life, little things that happened as an adult. It's like, it's got to start looking at the brighter side of things. And actually got into a car accident going on a little over 10 years. And I said, you know what? I was always woe is me, the world, business didn't work out or had to leave a job. So definitely, was a little bit more of a negative person. And then actually a friend gave me the video for the book, The Secret. There was like a 1 hour video. So it kind of changed my outlook on stuff. It just became a more positive person immediately. I was like, wow, I'm that guy that they're talking about. Like, you really do get back what you put out. So, me with my negative statements and like, oh, this sucks. My life is horrible. I got into this car accident. It wound up just, friends would call and be like, hey, how you doing? It's kind of, like, hey, I'm doing good. How are you? Oh, they'd ask me that question and I'd tell them my whole life story about how things, how everything was going so bad. I stopped that immediately. Wound up not reading the book for like 2 years, but I highly recommend that book. There are certain things in there that people wouldn't believe, but at the end of the day, it's about being positive and you're going to get back what you put out. If you're positive, you're going to attract positive people. If you're a negative person, you're going to just kind of float over or attract other negative people. So it's really putting out there what you want to get back and just being, it's kind of like the vision board thing. Like if you could see it, you can achieve it, believe it, put it out there in front of you. So became that person. So my life really kind of turned around from there. And I'm sorry, I kind of went into the secret part. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but it definitely became a more positive person. And that's just carried over. So you were asking me about the heart attack. So that made me a more positive person, but just by nature. I've always been a jokester. My dad was a jokester. My family, we were always picking on each other, making fun of each other. So I was joking with the guys in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. When my family came in, I kind of I guess it's my way of making other people feel comfortable. I was joking. It wasn't the falling on the floor or you're writhing in pain. That wasn't the heart attack that I had, which certainly people can have. I was conscious. I was fine. For whatever reason, the type of heart attack that I was having, it was because of these blockages. But I had friends visit me. Everybody was like, you don't look like you had a heart attack. I would get that a lot. My wife would be like, was this really a heart attack? Is this a heart attack? But you just blocked? Was it? I want to be, if I'm not always, I always want to be a happy person. And I use humor to make myself feel better about things and make other people feel comfortable. So I was never really down in the dumps after this happened. Again, sorry to bring it right back to jiu-jitsu, but it made me miss jiu-jitsu because it was the one thing that I couldn't do. But, got back to it pretty quickly. And life, other than me having to be careful about what I eat, a little more conscious of what I put in my body, I really tried to get back to normal as quickly as possible. And the only things that it really changed long-term for me was, until recently, the medicines that I was taking, again, would make me dizzy and lose breath real quick. So that's it's only been a couple of weeks that I've been off the meds, but I see that that's gone. I can exercise a little bit more, do cardio, and not feel the same way. It was just like, wow, I'm out of breath after just, a couple of minutes. And I'm a big guy by nature, so that does happen with bigger guys. I'm 235. I'm about 5'11". I'm carrying a lot of weight, but it was worse with the medication. So now that's gone, I'm really able to get back on a better path, physically, and that helps with the mental as well. So.
Yeah, that's great insights. Thanks for sharing the story and obviously all that. What inspires you daily?
I definitely, I'm a teacher by nature. I love to teach. So a big part of my job up until the pandemic was I managed a group of digital marketing specialists. So they'd have to listen to me on the phone, or, I would be able to teach them about our products. I'm that way with jiu-jitsu. I love teaching the new guys. I love just the training and imparting knowledge. So that's a huge part of what makes me happy. I think, that's so, again, it doesn't matter what it is. I think it's why our show has been so successful. We're probably one of the most downloaded jiu-jitsu podcasts that very specifically doesn't have a famous person attached to it. We're just a bunch of guys who train jiu-jitsu. So I think we're doing better numbers than even some of those famous guys. But it's our passion, it's our positivity. It's kind of our just kind of go with the flow feeling that we all have. Most of the guys that I train with, our personalities are different, but we all at the end of the day are very positive and driven. Jiu-jitsu helps with that. We're business owners, we're family men. But one thing that I could say among, my co-host on today's show, who's a friend, just recently opened his own gym. We're very driven, and I think a lot of that does come from what jiu-jitsu teaches us, the adversity of, being in a very precarious position. Somebody maybe has a choke or an arm, and having to use your mind, not just the physical strength to get out of something. Okay, well, if I can grab his foot, it'll make him release this arm, or vice versa. So a lot of that comes full circle with jiu-jitsu and what it's taught me. But again, at the end of the day, it's a lot easier to be positive than it is. It takes a lot more energy to be negative than it does to be positive, and that's just the way that I live my life. Cool.
Have you done much traveling internationally or domestically?
No, I hate to include cruises. We go on at least one family cruise every year. Pretty much since I've been with my wife, we try to do something. We actually got married on a cruise. That's how much we love it. So, a little bit older, wasn't worried about, never married before, but wasn't worried about having the old, the church type of wedding. We were both, hey, let's invite our closest friends and family who also all love to go on cruises. And we did it that way. So my international traveling has been more of that. I hope that that changes. My wife definitely wants to go to Europe, and I'd love to do a little traveling and bring my gi with me and do some training, internationally. But my international traveling has been more of that. But you know what that is if you've ever been on a cruise or know about them. You're in port for a couple of hours and you leave. Growing up, my family almost always went. My parents are from Puerto Rico. We almost every year went either in the summer or for Christmas. So a lot of my traveling growing up was almost every year we were going to Puerto Rico for 3 weeks to a month sometimes. We went for very long stints, and we'd spend a lot of time with our family and traveling around Puerto Rico. So that's really the extent of my travels. Although jiu-jitsu is really big in Australia.
Yeah.
You got some big names that have come out of Australia, and there are a lot of guys that train with people here that have moved to the U.S. to train. So it's definitely kind of one of those places on my wish list that I want to travel to.
Yeah, we always welcome, and we'll hook up when you come down.
Thank you.
What other hobbies and passions do you have aside from jiu-jitsu and UFC? What are the other things you like to do in your downtime?
Really, the podcasting has become something that's been really fun. It's I've got a 9 to 5 in the marketing world, which has helped with the Jiu-Jitsu podcast, me marketing my own podcast. But I'm finding this really fun to come on other people's podcasts. Yeah. Sometimes they're brand new. Sometimes they're more established. I don't care. I'm loving this part of it. So this is becoming a hobby, especially because really trying not to leave the house too much because, we're still in the midst of this pandemic. So this has taken the place of, kind of going out to the movies or going to restaurants. We still try to do that. We're trying to get back to a little bit more of a normal pace. but this has been real fun. I love learning what tools people are using. Again, I love talking about jiu-jitsu. I think I've made that obvious. So I love talking about jiu-jitsu. So it's fun for me to not have to worry so much about the technical side, because the podcast we just did now, that goes into post-production. We add graphics. We have logos that roll out and show the person's name. We put a lot into this production value because we always knew we wanted it to be kind of not just a jiu-jitsu podcast, but a show on YouTube. And that's where we're having a lot of success. So this is the new hobby right here. I lucky enough to get onto a few websites like the one where you found me. I'm on 3 different ones, and I'm always getting some really nice interview requests. So this has kind of become the new hobby on the weekends, at least. I try to do one. If I'm doing one podcast on the weekend, I try to do one guest spot. Like in 2 weeks, I'll do 2 podcasts on a weekend. I can't do a third guest spot. So I'll be doing 2 of my own. That will go about 4 hours. So, I guess podcasting is the new hobby. I've been doing this for going on 2 years. May is 2 years. We do 2 a month. We don't do a whole bunch, but we certainly put out podcasts, put out a lot of clips, do a lot of promotion, put a little bit more time between each podcast. That's the route that we've taken, mainly because everyone that's involved has a regular job. If we could do it more, we would do it more.
Sure, and I'm very similar. Obviously, it's a hobby and passion of mine too, so I can definitely relate to that.
How long have you been doing it now?
Probably a month, 5 weeks.
Okay, all right. Have you had any luck with getting invited onto other podcasts? Have you done any others?
Yeah, I've been literally non-stop daily, plus a full-time job doing this. It's just been intense. Go. It hasn't stopped.
That's awesome. Yeah, if I had more time, and look, I'm doing this in my home. I'm in a space in our home that's kind of in the middle of our townhouse. We're in a townhouse because we're waiting for our house to be built. Hopefully, I'll be able to have a podcast studio in the house. There's enough space for it. So I'm kind of in the middle room where you have to go through this room to get out of the bedrooms and go into the kitchen and the living room. So I'm tying up this space for my family, which they've been great about. My wife and my daughter have been great. But if I could lock myself away a little bit more, I'd maybe do 1 or 2 more during the week. But I kind of have to set up here and take up the space and ask them not to go on the internet so I have a better connection and be a little quiet because of the sound. But I have a ball doing this. I love it, and I guess between the podcasts that I've been on both sides of the microphone, or the interviewer and the interviewee. I'm having a lot of fun with it. So I definitely I call it the websites that you found me on and the other ones that I'm on. I call it Tinder for podcasters. That's essentially what it is.
You're just nuts, man.
Yeah. I was out there doing. Do you do a lot of requesting yourself? Do you go hey, I'd like to come on, or is it more people are finding your profile? Which way are you working it?
Initially, it was just obviously getting people on, for example, yourself. Now it's a bit of both. But I'm just out there, just reaching out, just getting guests because it's just something I want to do. I love interviewing people. I love hearing people's stories, people interested in their lives. So I just love it. It's a passion. That's all you need. That is absolutely all you need. I went a different route because my podcasting partner was really a graphic designer, very into production. He had done his own racing, a 1 hour movie that he produced himself, did the whole voiceover, shot it. It's amazing. And he wouldn't let me do it the kind of old school way of, okay, just we have a 3-camera setup. We really went big with it, right away, where you could just do it with the computer, be very successful and way bigger than what we're doing. But we went a route where we kind of just went a little bit of a different way than most people do. Again, we've wanted to create a show, a little less of a podcast and more of a show. We're going to be in a new space, hopefully, where we'll actually be able to record some, have a guest come in and actually record some jiu-jitsu techniques. So again, that's where the show, our dream, COVID messed that up for us, but we also kind of want to do that. So again, just having it's a lot of fun. I love the requests when they come in. I almost always say yes. I love just doing it, and it's great practice for both sides of the microphone or the interview process. So,
But yeah, I mean, good luck to you. Continued success on getting those interviews. But I mean, and it's great content to post. As from my marketing mind kicks in, and each one of those podcasts is something great to promote the show and to put on our channel and to repost on social media too. So just having a lot of fun with it.
100%. Couldn't agree more with you.
Yeah.
All right, cool. What does the future look like for Milton?
Well, move over, Joe Rogan. Here comes Milton Campis and the Jiu Jitsu Dummies. I didn't. This was not a dream of mine. I have to say that. Mm-hmm. This was I've told this story before to my audience. I would leave jiu-jitsu practice or training, and every once in a while, every couple of weeks, me and a couple of guys would go grab some pizza, have a couple of beers. And it always came around. We're jiu-jitsu, partners. So we'd talk about jiu-jitsu, but we'd give like the war stories and the little gossip that we would hear from, old coaches and things that happened. There was one coach there was a gym that the owner was cheating on his student who's also in the UFC. He was cheating with the UFC fighter's wife. Like just these crazy stories. That's a very public story if anybody wants to look it up. He went to the gym with a gun. Like I have one of my podcast partners, one of my co-hosts, trained at that gym. I'm not going to give the guy's name, but trained at that gym. And we would hear those stories and I would just say, you know what? I wish that somebody told me kind of the behind the scenes stuff about the jiu-jitsu world when I was a white belt, when I first started. And I would just walk away from those. And again, it's like, man, that was a great conversation. That was fun. And then I started to that was a podcast right there. I wish I could really share that. It was never a dream of becoming a podcaster. I listened to a little bit of Rogan, didn't really have like the, podcasts on my playlist of podcasts. I wasn't that guy. And then, I told my wife about it. I said, I'm thinking about doing this. I got this name. I think I'm going to call it Jiu-Jitsu Idiots. And she was like, oh, you should come to my office. There's a podcast that you could shoot in our conference room. And she was just on board from the beginning. And now so I was like, I mean, if she's on board, I could do this. Sure. Jiu-Jitsu Idiots was a little too strong. So we went with Jiu Jitsu Dummies, the playoff of crash test dummy. And the rest is history. So the future for me is being a bigger podcaster. I wouldn't mind. I love my job. I love what I do. But I call this my retirement program. I would hope to build this over the next few years to a place where, I could maybe retire and do this full time. The marketing side helps me understand how to get sponsors, which we've done. This is one of my guys right here, Flow and Roll. Some of the other guys are on my backdrop up here. But, the mixing kind of my love of jiu-jitsu and the marketing world has helped us make it successful and actually, make some money from it as well, or at least cover our costs, so I'm not really putting a lot out of pocket. We run ads on Google. We do, contests and give stuff away from our podcast shop. So, we are investing something into it. And I would suggest anybody out there to do that. A little boosting on Instagram doesn't hurt. Build your Facebook following. You can, do little ads and post for likes. But we did all that stuff because I do that in my day job. I coach other businesses on how to do that for themselves. So that's what's made it successful. And at the end of the day, I would love for this to get bigger and for me to be able to do this full time.
And why not do it for yourself too? So
yeah, why not?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Man. Yeah, man.
Actually, one other question. With all the changes that have happened in the United States, where do you see the future of the USA, just generally speaking?
More specifically as it relates to COVID, or just kind of the craziness with our freaking elections and Trump and all this craziness?
Everything. The whole
if my producer was here, I wouldn't be able to say this with him. He's packed up and he's gone. We're definitely on two opposite sides of the political spectrum. I'm definitely consider myself a Democrat, more progressive. He was a Trump supporter. So we have a rule on our podcast. At least my personal rule is no religion, no politics, because it's too divisive. It's very divisive. He and I, as good of friends as we are, we think completely different about the politics side of the thing. So we have an agreement, and actually it was He thought Trump wasn't going to leave office. He thought Biden was like everything was going to go Biden's to Trump's way. And I said, if Biden gets inaugurated, we don't talk about it anymore. I don't want to talk about politics with you because I feel like we get it's a little too divisive. They're talking about two friends. So, what I've noticed here is when I wake up in the morning, and I've had this conversation with other people away from the podcast, we don't wake up in the morning anymore going, let me turn on the news just to see what Trump has said or what trouble he's gotten us into today. It is such a relief to not see that. On the other side of the spectrum, though, I have a lot of conversations with people, and this is what I say. At the end of the day, although the one thing that Trump did that personally affected me in my household was that his tax policy put more money into our checks, which is still going to change. It was meant to kind of like go away slowly. But we got more money in our paychecks. We were taxed less. We got more money in it. Other than that, if I never turned on the news, there's nothing that he did that would have really affected me personally in my home. People that don't follow politics are like, I don't follow this stuff. They're the same when Obama was in office. They lived the same life when Trump was around. Again, maybe had a couple more bucks in their pocket. And the same thing now. Biden's in office. If you didn't watch the news and you didn't pay attention to a lot of stuff, you wouldn't necessarily feel so affected by it. I definitely am somebody who watches the news. When I'm working, I usually have CNN on in the background. I had to get away from that in the Trump years a little bit because it was a little bit like, oh my God, what is this guy doing? But other than, this year was different because then we had COVID relief packages and money that was coming to us. So that I don't consider that a Trump thing. It would have been anybody that was in office would have had to do that for us. Other than those things like money, he really hasn't affected us. The world saw this craziness. And yes, there are certain things he did that the climate, the Paris Climate Agreement, the Iran nuclear deal, like coming out of things like that were a little scary if you watch the news. If you didn't watch the news, we were out. 4 years later, we're back in. What changed between now and then in your personal life? Nothing, unless you would have if you would have watched the news, you'd been scared every day about it. But, in the day-to-day, it didn't really make it. So my point basically is, like, it looks crazy if you watch the news, but the average Joe, the average American that doesn't pay attention to this just lived their life, and it's been a normal 4 years. So, yes, it got a little nutty. It's been a lot more quiet in just the last few weeks. You don't wake up to craziness. I'm glad he's off of Twitter. I mean, these are my personal opinions. I don't know what your political leanings are, but, it's just nice for my phone not to give me an alert, that says some crazy thing that he tweeted and we're doing this, or we're putting forces here, or not putting, or pulling troops out. As an American, I feel like, the future looks a lot brighter than it did just a month ago. But again, not a lot has changed in the daily lives of most people. The pandemic definitely threw. If we didn't have the pandemic, that would be even more so. That statement would be even more true. Right now, as it relates to the pandemic, hope for the vaccine. We picked up on our vaccine. I'm not sure what it's like in Australia, but we've definitely picked up on the vaccine distribution and actual shots in arms. The NFL after the Super Bowl that's happening here this week, the National Football League. After that, all of the stadiums have now donated their space to vaccine distribution. So every single stadium will be a mass distribution center. So, wow. Those are positive things. Those are the things that you like to hear. Yeah. People helping people, American or now or otherwise, people helping people, companies helping people. We're back to that, which I felt like we had in the Obama years, which we just haven't had in the last 4 years. So, that's my take. Any further than that, do I have a crystal ball? No, but it feels a lot. It's a lot easier to wake up in the morning to go about your day if you don't watch the news and go, well, I really got to tune in and see if something crazy happened. Kind of felt that way before. Like I really need to be in the know. And I had to check the news, whether I liked it or not, just to see what was happening. Was there something out there that was going to affect me or that I was just going to flip out about? We're very happy. I think most people are very happy that that's gone away.
Cool. That's great insights, and thank you for sharing your opinion, man.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah. It's amazing. Milton, thanks for coming on my podcast. I appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me, man.
So
anytime.